What if I told you that some of the most successful people in the world are also the ones who rarely share their feelings? They're visionaries, innovators, and game changers, and yet they seem to have a strange aversion to displaying emotions. You might even call them emotionally closed off. But here's the thing, this isn't just a quirk, it's a deliberate choice. These individuals have learned to recognize the difference between vulnerability and strength. They understand that sharing their feelings can make them appear weak, and in a world where confidence is often mistaken for bravado, they'd rather appear tough than open. But here's where it gets crazy. Research suggests that this self-imposed silence can actually be a coping mechanism. By suppressing their emotions, they're able to maintain a sense of control in a chaotic world. It's a defense mechanism that served them well, but at what cost? Imagine if you had a friend who was always the first one to calm everyone down in a heated argument, but never shared their own feelings about the situation. Wouldn't you wonder what they were really thinking? Well, it's the same with these high achievers. They're often the ones who seem to have it all together, but beneath the surface, they're struggling to keep it all in. And that's not even the most surprising thing. Studies have shown that people who rarely share their feelings tend to have higher levels of anxiety and depression. It's almost as if they're paying a mental health price for their emotional suppression. But wait until you hear this next part. These individuals often believe that emotional suppression is a sign of maturity. Honestly, this blew my mind when I first discovered it. I mean, think about it. Our society often rewards stoicism and silence, while punishing openness and vulnerability. It's no wonder that these people have learned to adapt to this norm. But if you think that's wild, just wait. Research has also shown that people who rarely share their feelings tend to have more difficulty forming deep, meaningful relationships. They're often seen as aloof or distant, and it's no wonder they're so focused on keeping their emotions in check that they've forgotten how to truly connect with others. Now I know what you're thinking. This is all well and good, but what about emotional intelligence? Well, it turns out that people who rarely share their feelings tend to have a harder time reading other people's emotions. They're not as attuned to the subtleties of emotional expression, and this can put them at a disadvantage in both personal and professional relationships. But here's the thing, I'm not saying that this is always a bad thing. In fact, some of these individuals have learned to use their emotional suppression to their advantage. They're able to navigate complex social situations with ease, and they're not easily swayed by the opinions of others. And that's where this part comes to an end. But I have to ask, what do you think is the cost of emotional suppression? Do you think it's worth it, or is it time to start talking more openly about our feelings? Let me know in the comments below. Imagine a person who has been to the top of their field, built a successful business, or even changed the world, but somehow remains eerily distant and unemotional, rarely sharing their feelings with others. You might even think they're the epitome of confidence and control. But what if I told you that this emotional stoicism might be hiding a deeper psychological issue? But here's the thing, people who rarely share their feelings often believe they're showing strength, not weakness. They think if they let their guard down, they'll be taken advantage of or appear vulnerable. Honestly, this blew my mind when I first discovered it. I mean, who wouldn't want to appear strong and in control? But as it turns out, this mask of invincibility can have a price, and that price is often their relationships. Think about it, when was the last time you had a meaningful conversation with someone who barely ever opened up? It's hard to connect with someone when they're constantly hiding behind a wall of emotional protection. But what if I told you that there's a reason they behave like this? It's not just about being tough or in control. Research suggests that people who suppress their emotions often have a distorted view of what it means to be emotional. They see emotions as a sign of weakness, not strength. But here's the thing, emotions are what make us human. They're what allow us to connect with others, to form deep relationships, and to experience life in all its beauty and complexity. But wait until you hear this next part. These individuals might be hiding a deeper issue, one that's rooted in their childhood experiences. You see, people who grew up in environments where emotions were suppressed or ignored might have learned to do the same. It's not that they're weak or emotionless, it's just that they've learned to cope with their emotions in a way that's not always healthy, and that's not even the most surprising thing. These individuals might be more likely to develop anxiety, depression, or even cardiovascular disease. That's right, the mask of invincibility can actually be a ticking time bomb. But what if I told you there's hope for these individuals? There is a way for them to break free from this emotional suppression and start living a more authentic life. Imagine being able to connect with others on a deeper level, to experience emotions in a way that's not overwhelming or debilitating. It's possible, but it requires a willingness to confront and challenge the patterns of behavior that have held you back for so long. But what happens when these individuals finally start to open up and share their feelings? It's like a weight has been lifted off their shoulders. They start to form deeper connections with others, to experience life in all its beauty and complexity. It's a beautiful thing to witness. And that's not all. Research suggests that when we share our feelings with others, it can actually improve our mental health, increase our sense of connection and belonging, and even boost our immune system. That's right, the act of sharing our feelings can have a profound impact on our well-being, but I'm getting ahead of myself. That's next week's topic. For now, I want to leave you with a question. What would happen if you started to open up and share your feelings more? Would it change your relationships, your mental health, or your overall sense of well-being? Let me know in the comments below. You won't believe what often lies beneath the surface of people who never share their feelings. On the outside, they may appear perfectly fine, confident, and in control, but beneath the facade, they're fighting a secret battle. Their faces remain expressionless, even in situations where most of us would be visibly reacting. At work, with friends, or during family gatherings, they seem to be observing life with an air of detachment. But have you ever wondered what drives this enigmatic behavior? What's it like to be trapped in a prison of silence where emotions are a luxury few can afford? Research suggests that people who rarely share their feelings may be hiding a traumatic experience from their childhood where emotions were consistently suppressed or ignored. This can lead to a distorted view of emotions as something threatening or untrustworthy. As a result, they develop coping mechanisms to shield their feelings from the world, even themselves. But at what cost? Imagine waking up every day, feeling numb and disconnected from the world around you. Imagine having to stifle every reaction, every emotion, every genuine response. It's a heavy burden to carry, and one that can have long-term consequences on mental and physical health. Studies have linked emotional suppression to anxiety, depression, cardiovascular disease, and even chronic pain. But here's where it gets crazy. People who suppress their feelings often do so not because they're strong, but because they feel weak. They perceive their emotions as a threat to their image, their relationships, or their sense of control. It's a vicious cycle where emotional suppression leads to feelings of isolation, loneliness, and disconnection. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible to break free from this emotional suppression. In fact, research suggests that by acknowledging and expressing our emotions, we can begin to develop a more authentic and fulfilling life. But the question remains, how do we encourage someone who rarely shares their feelings to open up? It's a delicate matter, and one that requires empathy, patience, and understanding. Sometimes, all it takes is a genuine and non-judgmental listener to help someone feel safe enough to share their emotions. But other times, it may take a lot more effort to break down the walls that have been built. And that's not even the most surprising thing. Sometimes, people who rarely share their feelings may be pretending to be happy just to fit in or avoid conflict. They may be putting on a brave face to hide their true emotions, or using humor as a defense mechanism to avoid vulnerability. It's a delicate dance of deception, where the truth is hidden behind a mask of confidence. Honestly, this blew my mind when I first discovered it. I had always assumed that people who shared their emotions freely were more sensitive, but what if it's actually the opposite? What if people who rarely share their feelings are actually struggling to connect with their emotions, and therefore with others? As we continue to explore this complex topic, I want to leave you with a question. What if you're not alone in this struggle? What if there are others out there who are secretly fighting the same battle? Share with me in the comments below if you have a similar experience, or if you know someone who fits this profile. Let's work together to break down the stigma surrounding emotional expression and create a more authentic and compassionate community. You won't believe how many times you've interacted with someone who seems perfectly fine, yet beneath the surface, they're drowning in emotions they can barely acknowledge. They appear confident, in control, and effortlessly put together, but don't be fooled. This facade often conceals a deep-seated struggle with emotional suppression. This is a psychological phenomenon known as alexithymia, a term coined by a Greek psychiatrist in the 1970s to describe individuals who struggle to identify and express their emotions. People with alexithymia may come across as stoic or unemotional, but in reality, they're often wrestling with intense feelings that they're desperately trying to keep hidden. But here's where it gets crazy. Researchers have found that this suppression of emotions is often rooted in traumatic experiences from childhood. When we're young, we're constantly trying to make sense of the world around us, and our brains are wired to associate strong emotions with danger or unpredictability. As a result, we may develop an unconscious habit of pushing away emotions that feel overwhelming or threatening. Imagine if you grew up in an environment where expressing emotions was seen as a sign of weakness or vulnerability. You might have been conditioned to believe that your feelings weren't trustworthy or that they would somehow control you. This can lead to a distorted view of emotions as enemies to be vanquished, rather than as vital signals that help us navigate our relationships and the world around us. I know someone who fits this description. He's a successful business owner, a devoted husband, and a seemingly happy father of two. But when you dig deeper, you'll discover that he's been carrying around a heavy burden of unresolved emotions since childhood. He's learned to hide them behind a mask of confidence and competence, but it's taking a toll on his mental and physical health. The consequences of emotional suppression are profound. Research has shown that people with alexithymia are more prone to anxiety, depression, and even cardiovascular disease. They may also struggle to form and maintain healthy relationships, as their inability to express emotions makes it difficult for others to connect with them on a deeper level. Wait until you hear this next part. Many people with alexithymia may not even realize they're suppressing their emotions. They may feel numb, empty, or detached from their feelings, but they can't quite put their finger on why. This is because their brains have become skilled at hiding emotions from themselves, almost as a way of self-protection. And that's not even the most surprising thing. Research has shown that people with alexithymia may actually be more empathetic and compassionate than those without the condition. They're just less able to express their emotions, which can make it challenging for others to see their true nature. Honestly, this blew my mind when I first learned about alexithymia. I realized that I had been interacting with people who were struggling to express their emotions for years, without even realizing it. It made me wonder how many of us are walking around with this condition, hidden behind a mask of confidence and control. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever interacted with someone who seemed perfectly fine on the outside, but was secretly struggling with emotional suppression? Share your stories and experiences in the comments below, and let's work together to break down the stigma surrounding emotional expression and create a more authentic and compassionate community. That's all for today's video, but stay tuned for the next part, where we'll delve deeper into the roots of alexithymia and explore some surprising ways to overcome it. Imagine you're at a party, surrounded by friends, yet you feel invisible. You put on a mask of confidence, hiding the turmoil beneath, and it's a skill you've mastered over the years. But have you ever wondered why some people are naturally more reserved and emotionally guarded than others? Research suggests that this could be a sign of a psychological phenomenon known as alexithymia, a condition where individuals struggle to identify and express their emotions. It's as if they're living in a perpetual state of emotional numbness. People with alexithymia may appear confident and in control on the surface, but beneath the surface, they're often wrestling with intense feelings and may be more prone to anxiety, depression, and other health issues. But here's where it gets crazy. These individuals may not even realize they're struggling to express their emotions. They might think they're fine, that they're just being rational and logical, but deep down, they're experiencing a kind of emotional suffocation. It's like they're drowning in a sea of feelings, but they don't know how to swim. Now, I know what you're thinking. Is this just an excuse for people to be emotionally unavailable? But honestly, this blew my mind when I first learned about it. It turns out that people with alexithymia often have traumatic experiences from childhood that lead to emotional suppression. It's a coping mechanism that becomes a lifelong pattern, making it difficult for them to connect with others on a deeper level. But wait until you hear this next part. Research suggests that people with alexithymia may be more likely to develop addictive behaviors, such as substance abuse or compulsive shopping, as a way to self-medicate and numb their emotional pain. It's a vicious cycle that's hard to break, and it's often misunderstood by friends and family who think they're just being closed off or unfeeling. And that's not even the most surprising thing. People with alexithymia often have trouble empathizing with others, which can lead to difficulties in relationships and social situations. It's like they're wearing a mask that says, "I'm fine," but their eyes are screaming, "I'm hurting." It's a paradox that's both heartbreaking and fascinating. Leave a comment if you think you've met someone with alexithymia in your life. Have you ever struggled to connect with someone who seems emotionally distant? I want to hear from you. Stay with me here because next time, we're going to explore the roots of alexithymia and discover some surprising ways to overcome it.